You can hear me. We're going to get started here in, well, right now. Let's do it. My name's Jim. I run sales and marketing at WineDirect. WineDirect's the sponsor for the DTC track for the entire conference, and we couldn't be happier to support the Oregon Wine Symposium and this great event again this year. It's always a super impactful event for us because we get to interact with hundreds of wineries, including hundreds of our customers. We have almost nearly 300 wineries on our platform. If you're not familiar with us, we have software for wineries that enable DTC sales. So your retail room, point of sale, wine club, tasting room. And actually this summer, we're excited to announce we are opening a brand new facility in the Willamette Valley up in Tualatin. And that's going to be a big fulfillment center where we're going to bring next generation fulfillment technology to allow wineries to do things like personalized boxes, personalized shipments, really double down on the inbox experience. And some of the things that you've probably heard about in the past couple of days, or actually past year, is the modern consumer wants more and more from their DTC partners or the suppliers. And this has created a unique set of challenges for wineries. And then after years, and probably 15 years of having this amazing tailwind at our back where we have year-over-year growth in DTC wine, it feels like there's a headwind for the first time in a while, right? Some challenges that are new that we haven't experienced, right? So some wineries are reporting declining visitation. Certainly, there's this demand for personalization from consumers, right? The days of an email with your name on top isn't filling people's hearts with sunshine anymore. You need to have, hey, I found these wines just for you. Your personalization has to exist in every touch point in your business, including in the fulfillment step. So beyond that, you hear talk of shifting demographics. So boomers are aging. We can't rely on their business, in the next 5-10 years, and everyone's waiting and doing, quite a bit of hand-wringing about when will the millennials show up. So, there are a handful of challenges, not to mention increasing competition. So, on the West Coast, I think there was over 2,000 new tasting rooms opened up in the past 2 years. So these are 2,000 new choices for wine consumers. So this is putting unique demands on infrastructure and challenges for wineries, like how are you going to get people to continue to show up? So, the question that we aim to ask in this track today is how does my winery or how does your winery remain competitive in this changing environment? So in order to answer those questions, we have a couple great sessions teed up, including this one, where we're going to discuss best practices for DTC managers. Hallie and Carrie will take you through how to staff up, attract, and retain the best staff to meet these rising consumer demands and expectations. So we'll hop into that. Later this afternoon, I will be part of a panel that's going to go over something, the session's called DTC Metrics That Matter. So we're going to take a look at data from over 1,800 wineries, something like 60,000 wine club members. It might be more than that now that I think about it. And share some benchmark data so you can compare yourself to your peers within Oregon and around the country to see like, hey, is my retention rate where it needs to be? Am I attracting the right amount of people to my website? All the way down the line. So that'll be a really great working session too, where you're going to leave with a worksheet where you can compare your business to wineries in state and all over. So the last thing I wanted to mention that, with all these challenges, it's important to pick a DTC provider that you can trust. We have 1,800 customers around the world, been around for 15 years, and we're going to be around for many more years developing great tools to help you guys succeed. So if you want to learn more about what we do at WineDirect, we have a great website, winedirect.com, and a knowledge center that has white papers, videos, trainings for wineries to help you, solve the toughest problems you face in your business. So with that, or go chat with the people down in the trade show. They're lovely folks from our support, training, sales department. Love to chat with you. So with that, I'm going to kick it off, hand things over to Hallie and Carrie, and they're going to take you through best practices for DTC managers. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Thanks, Jim.
Hello.
Yeah, you got yours?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. Happy Wednesday. My name is Hallie White. I'm the Director of Sales and Operations at Soder Vineyards. I've been there just over 8 years, and I was originally hired in the tasting room, and I've worked my way up to oversee the operations of the whole company now.
True. Hi, and I'm Carrie Kalsher. I am the Director of Sales and Education at A to Z Wineworks in Rex Hill, and I started as the Direct Sales Manager there 9 years ago. I didn't have an office. My office was the tasting room. It was me and one other full-time person at Rex Hill at the time in the tasting room and in direct sales, and I too have worked my way up to now overseeing our new direct sales manager who's been there for 2 years, and also working out in the national realm. So I have some insights out around the nation and some export as well. So yeah, some good insights we hope to share with you today.
And we decided to do this seminar together because our DTC programs are about as different as you can get. Soder Vineyards is 100% by appointment. It's open 7 days a week. And Rex Hill is not by appointment.
No, opposite. We're right off the freeway. You just try not to hurt yourself as you come in the front door. I'm sure some of you drive by on occasion or have seen us. We're open 7 days a week, 10 to 5. So we have appointments that can be made, but they're more experiential and experience-driven, not a requirement to visit.
Yeah. And we're going to take questions at the end. So by all means, put them in through the app or come up to the microphone at the end. But we have 15 minutes, hopefully, if we don't talk too much, at the end for questions. And we want to start off with who's in the audience. Raise your hand if you're a GM or an owner. And if you're a tasting room manager, fabulous. DTC manager, great. That's a pretty good mix. Nice.
Yeah, welcome. We are not going to spend this hour giving you the individual tips and tricks to grow your wine club or increase sales or measure your cost of goods. All those are in different seminars today. We hope that you'll be able to attend some of them. But we are going to go back to sort of the original meaning of symposium in general, that we are going to put forth some concepts and hopefully change some ideas of what we are doing currently in our direct sales realm in Oregon. So we are going to start by giving you some numbers to set the stage. I think we are. There we go.
There we go.
Just the nation. Let's look at the number of wineries. Jim was alluding to this. In 1995, there were 1,800 wineries. Now, over 9,000. That's up 80%. It's a pretty big number. This one should shock you. 7 wine companies make up 70% of the total U.S. wine production.
That should terrify you a little bit.
Especially in this room, right? How many of you make 5,000 cases or less? Yeah. I mean, that's a decreasing market share, and we're fighting for 30% of it. Distributors, same time range, 3,000 down to 1,200. It's down 150%. So you're seeing a disparity here, right? And the number of distributors that now control 50% of the total U.S. wine market, 3. With consolidation, this is just getting worse. It's getting worse for the little guy. And we hear that all the time. Hallie and I are both on the Oregon Wine Board Education Committee and help drive content for the business sessions here. And every single year we review all of your wants and needs and your desires for next year. And they're increasingly, how do we stay relevant as a group of small artisan producers in this kind of environment, and it's really difficult. So we wanted to focus today on one of those areas that is growing for us and is a growth area for Oregon in general, and specifically for smaller wineries in Oregon. But that should kind of freak you out. when you add about 3 more distributors to that, you bump up to about 70-75%. So we're really not looking at 50% teeny tiny distributors ready to take on your teeny tiny brand and make it the next great thing. We're just talking about an ever decreasing market share.
81% of wineries in Oregon are less than 5,000 cases, which probably doesn't surprise any of you. And 57% of sales through the DTC channel. So that's an important part of all of our businesses. And then the difference in margin that we're all well aware of between DTC and wholesale channels.
Right, so it can be positive. Here's some of the positives, right? Some of the original stuff should scare you a little bit, but we do have an outlet for our wines, and it is in a very strong DTC channel. And in fact, I don't think I have the other numbers on here, but the national, do I have these? No, I don't. The numbers for, just preview of the next slide. The numbers for the average of percentage of sales through DTC channel in the nation are actually higher than the average here in Oregon, which doesn't really hold much, information for us. I think it's actually an increase of DTC for cases under 5,000, and yet we are a region of under 5,000 case wineries predominantly, and we're under the national average. And what that said to me was not that we have room to grow, which I do believe we do have room to grow, but was that you all are not filling out your surveys. And and I see Jeff Peterson in the middle of this room, like going whoo whoo whoo. Huge plug here. If did any of you sit in the salary survey thing yesterday? Right, some of those numbers were shocking, but 110 wineries filled that out. There are over 700 of us. We should all be filling out that data. And if every person in this room has not been filling out these surveys, how can we ever accurately sit up here and tell you what we should be doing if we're not measuring accurately? So please, when you see those if you don't see them come across your desks, email us all and say, where the heck are all my surveys so I can get accurate information? We want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on. So really needed to be upfront about that. Although 57%, my guess is it's higher than the average.
We're not only competing in the national market, but here at home. So in the last 8 years, 600 new wineries. That's 75 new wineries a year on average in Oregon. That averages out to be 703 visitors per month. This slide is from Silicon Valley Bank, from their wonderful presentation they do on data. And we actually, for the first time, went down on average visitors per month. So we're a maturing wine region in terms of direct sales and visitors, as much as we're still growing and everything looks great and everything you're hearing this year at Oregon Wine Symposium in terms of how Oregon's doing, we're doing pretty good. But we're competing with each other now.
And that's an average, right? That's considering people like Rex Hill, who are right off the freeway and easier to get to than a lot of you that are buried up in the hills, more difficult for even local traffic to get to. And you're seeing us flatten out there. Did anyone else, and I have my own theory about what happened between 2015 and 2016, but how many people walked into your tasting rooms and said, well, we were planning to go to California, but with all the fires, we actually ended up coming to Oregon, and we're really happy to have been here. And if you sat in that seminar yesterday that Vanessa Haddock and Rachel Sims were leads on, you heard that the reason that people are here is largely because they're coming back to the region. So getting them here initially is the issue, right? That's where we all need to be doing our work together, collaboratively. So this is repeat business here. That was a big injection, I thought, perhaps because of the climactic hurdles that California has been experiencing and will only continue to experience. Resonate? A little bit? A little bit.
Your 703 visitors, could you guys see that slide on the big screen? Can you actually see the pie chart there? Together, the tasting room and wine club channels make up 77% of the overall DTC profit center. That's the takeaway from this and how they're changing from 16 to 17. Wine club and tasting room. Everything else is tiny so far.
And we'll just let that speak for itself. It's dependent on foot traffic. And we're seeing the need for that to diversify and for that to change. And we had a conversation with Jim from Wine Direct before everybody came into the room about Amazon and the changing face of digital direct to consumer and what that's going to look like. And we've seen Jeff Bezos buy up all the Whole Foods, and everybody's just laying in wait, like what's going to happen there. For sure, something in the wine space, right? You know, they had their wine platform, and then they had to close their wine platform because of compliance. Well, don't look for that to be closed long. We definitely need to diversify, but right now we are dependent largely upon foot traffic. And the times are changing.
Either of these look familiar to any of you?
Yeah, the one on the left, not so familiar anymore, right? The one on the right, every day.
We're just going to let those sink in for a second.
Anybody seeing these same headlines as you scroll every day through the ticker? Every day it's something new, right? 1 million wine drinkers in the ages of, 21 to 35 lost every year. Millennials don't have the luxury income. 2/3 of them are supplemented in some way. Or no, it was 2 out of 3 of them. That's the number. 2 out of 3 of them are supplemented by their parents, well into their 30s.
Even if it's just helping them pay for their Netflix subscription. That's what Rob from Silicon Valley Bank said the other night that he still does for his daughter.
That should really resonate too, right? Our consumer is changing. Our employees are also changing.
This quote resonated with me a lot, and I'm sure it will with all of you. Millennials are growing up in a society where the largest retail store doesn't own any items, the biggest transportation service doesn't own any vehicles, and the most popular hotel chain doesn't own any hotels. So we all know that, but summarizing it in that way changes it a little bit, and how the wine world will change based on all these things that millennials want, which is experience.
Yeah, a lower barrier to entry, right? They don't want boring. They don't want stodgy. They don't want the same thing that everybody else has gotten, and they certainly don't want to pay a high price for it. So we really need to start thinking about that. And as our friends again confirmed yesterday, the average customer here in Oregon 20 years ago was 39 years old. Today that customer is 54. So it's the same customer.
Same person. That's a problem.
Yikes, everyone. Let's do something different, right? Let's lead the charge like Oregon has always done. This thing works every other time. Though we need to evolve. I liked this one, the Facebook. So what's working? Yeah, you got all the good notes over here, buddy. Your team needs to understand how to sell, sure, but also how to host. If we're talking about an experience-driven valley, we need to learn how to give the experience. Visitation is up. That's wonderful. We should be able to then capitalize on that. Overall DTC sales are up. Again, we keep hearing all of these metrics that things are working for us, that Oregon wine is great. It's hitting the market at a really high price point, great value, high point systems. Okay? We have more club members than ever before. We have a deep sense of collaboration. These things all work in our favor, absolutely. But what's not working?
Many things.
A few things, a few key things. We actually asked, we not only pulled data from the Wine Business Monthly, over the last few years, we really scoured through a lot of this data. We pulled from the SVB report, both the one that came out just this last 2 weeks and the last few years. So we looked at the trends there. And we also asked our buddies down the road. So we polled 12 different wineries, DTC managers, and just asked them some, burning questions. This one being the biggest of them. What's been your biggest challenge this year? And lo and behold, those sources all matched up. What we're experiencing right down the road is exactly what these larger news outlets are telling us we're experiencing. And here were the ones that stood out to us the most and
There's
really
a theme.
repeated.
So it might seem a little snarky to put staffing so many times, but we also thought of putting just traffic, staffing, because that was all the responses, every single one, and what we can do about that. And what does that mean for us? That means people, your people, the people that visit you, people in all aspects.
Does this ring true for everybody? Nods. How many people would say that traffic was your biggest issue? How many people say that staffing continues to be a big issue? Courtney is double-handing over there because Courtney knows.
She's got a big staff.
She knows. I think we couldn't agree more. We actually, one of the numbers that resonated really with me was the Wine Business Monthly survey that they did about a year ago. For all of the nation, they asked people what their biggest challenge area was in hiring, and 77% said that it was extremely difficult to find people in the direct sales realm. Only 4% of respondents said that it was easy, and that's nationwide. I couldn't agree more here. I think that that is a huge problem for us, and we talk about it often. We talk about how we have a lack of young talent moving to this area specifically for that area, that job, those jobs in direct sales, which are, they're big deals. They can be. I mean, we're living proof of that. But we came here hungry. I went from the restaurant community, took a half pay cut to start as a manager. Mm-hmm. And I was moving from the Midwest, so it wasn't like I was, making New York numbers in the restaurant industry. It was difficult. I clawed my way for a couple of years, but I really believed in the industry. I believed in the wine. I believed in the winery I was helping build. But that is, I think, increasingly rare, and especially when your staff, I'm a Gen Xer, when your staff is millennial driven and they have grown up going, you show me this right now. I have student loans. I have stuff to take care of. I don't have time. I need to know what your vision is, and then maybe I'll be on your team. But it's not quite the same person we're trying to hire.
I'm a millennial, for the record.
Yeah. That. She's wise for her years.
The Culture Club. So this is where we joke that now we're going to solve all your problems. We're going to give you all the answers.
This is it. Ready?
How you hire, how you treat your staff, and how you structure your team are all probably the most important thing out there, right?
True.
That plays a huge role in how your customer then feels. We're all warm and fuzzy millennials. We want to know how you feel, right? And we want you to know how we feel. So brand loyalty requires obsession about your experience. How many people have an iPhone in this room? That's way more than half. But do we all know that Android's probably better technology and a better camera?
We all know it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want a green text showing up on my phone.
Do we all kick off the people in group text that have Androids?
Yeah. So, but it's true, right? That brand loyalty is huge, and you need brand ambassadors to create brand loyalty, because we're all upholding that text chain mentality, right? We give our buddies crap that have the green texts. We all do that. We feed into that. Mm-hmm. So the rules of attraction. How do you create a team? How do you create a team that becomes brand ambassador for you and brand ambassador for your wines and stays? And here's where we're going to dig into some of those concepts. What brings in the right candidates? You have probably heard the name Simon Sinek a few times in the last couple of days. We're going to mention him one more time. How I haven't heard him mentioned is a great book that he wrote called Start with the Why. And there's an incredible and quite short TED Talk that he's done titled The Same. If you haven't yet watched it, please do so. I think it's helpful in conjuncture with some of those branding conversations that we constantly have. You know, be sure you know yourself. Know what your winery does that no other winery does. Know how to differentiate yourself when you're telling your brand story. Okay, let's take that a step further. How do you get your staff to buy into that? You may know your brand story. Are you conveying that properly? And it's not just through an employee manual. It's not just through a training packet. It's not through an hour-long training session, right? You have to truly and firmly believe in what you're doing. And speaking specifically to those tasting room managers and direct sales managers out there who are not owners and founders of your winery, do you know why you work for the winery you work for? Do you know what it is that drives you every day to come to work and be excited? Do you have that spirit and that energy and that passion that hopefully the owners of your winery have shared with you? And are you then able to translate that to your team? That's a deep, resonant question. That's something that you should be sitting with. And I suggest asking yourself weekly, if not daily. You know, is this the passion that you have?
It all goes back to the warm and fuzzy. You can feel that if somebody has that passion, right? Hard to explain sometimes, but you can certainly feel it when you walk into a tasting room where somebody's really sure why they're there, right? Secondly, pride of position. And this one hits home for Carrie and I both a lot because we came through the tasting room and up through the direct sales channel of we as a culture in the wine industry have a tendency to say, oh, you're just in the tasting room, right? How many people have felt that or heard that? And they are the face.
Stephanie,
Hey,
hand
Stephanie.
up.
We are the face of your winery, right? When a customer walks into their tasting room, they should be prideful of their position, and you should make them feel that way. They should know why they're there because of that passion. And we all, as an industry, have to stop saying, oh, I just work in the tasting room, right? Because we've built that culture ourselves. No consumers say, oh, you're just in the tasting room, right? That's us.
That's us in big ways. When I moved here, I moved from the Midwest. There are wineries in Missouri. We actually had the first AVA there, but we didn't go to them often. So the culture of the tasting room or the culture of the winery was something quite foreign to me other than as a visitor. And when I started as direct sales manager, I was so proud. I was like, this is great. I'm running that entire front of house operation. Let's do this thing. And very quickly I realized how little respect wineries have for those roles. And it really shows in how we talk to our tasting room or don't talk to our tasting room, how we train our tasting room staff or include them in our all-staff meetings. You know, we talk about HR and how to retain great employees and check in with them and weekly and, bi-yearly or biannual reviews, asking them how they feel. We give them all the metrics we possibly can. We share all the information. Do we do that with our part-timers? Do we do that with the people that are there on Saturday? Guess who's in front of your customer the most?
And do we follow that up with how much we pay them? The next bullet point, right? The Wine Business Monthly recently salary survey said, we pay most of our tasting room people the same starting wage as fast food employees. So we're expecting that the face of our company is, first of all, they're not prideful necessarily of their positions because of a culture that we've put in place. And then we pay them the same amount as the guy at McDonald's. It's not going to work very well for long-term engagement with your employees.
Yeah, we sit here and wonder why it is that we have such a difficult time filling those positions, and yet people fighting for seller jobs. I'd rather do what I do than clean a drain any day of the week, but that's not the respect that people give, right? And it certainly follows with the pay structures, and we see that with every survey that we do.
And the last bullet point on there is opportunities for advancement. And I think often as managers, we can see that there are opportunities for advancement, but have we communicated that with our employees? Have we said that? It doesn't mean that there's a direct path for growth. I certainly never would have guessed even 3 years ago that I would be in the position that I'm in. When I started, I was just looking for a part-time job because I was just moving back to the country. The path for growth is not always obvious, but the communication that there is an opportunity to grow is important, and making sure you say that. And as Carrie and I said, we both saw that opportunity in our jobs and took a pay cut from being a server at a restaurant initially, right? How many people have done that? Yeah, a few hands go up. And then another bullet point that's not on there, but that is going to be repeated throughout this presentation is word of mouth. Rules of attraction. How do you get the best people? Talk to other people in the industry. We get many employees from our former employees, because inevitably we will have former employees. We're a seasonal business in the direct sales department, right? But if you treated them well and like they were real important humans, the face of your company, then they're going to tell all their friends that they should go work for you part-time next summer. We'll continue on the word of mouth thing.
Some of this stuff is, it's pretty weighty, right? This is a big concept. This is asking us to try to shift some pretty deep ingrained thinking in our industry. Does this seem foreign to anybody? Does anybody, I want to hear some engagement from you guys. Do you feel like this seems like areas for improvement? Do you feel those same things within your winery?
Are any of you surprised by what we're saying so far?
Nobody's surprised. Okay, good.
Okay.
See a hand move back there and I immediately jump. Nope, okay.
All right, best practices for DTC hiring. Think outside the box. How many people, when you want to hire, you go to winejobs.com? Or how many people, when you're looking for a job, you go to winejobs.com? We'll just touch on the word of mouth thing again there. But I learned from somebody in this room, actually, Brian Seifer, that whenever you're on the road, whenever you're traveling, whenever you're going out for coffee, if somebody gives you a really great hospitality experience, give them your card and say, if you ever want to work in wine. Because whether or not they have any interest in working in wine, you just made their day probably. And I've had a few people reach out to me and be interested and say, were you for real? Like, yeah. I don't just drop my card and give you my number to everybody.
Whole different seminar.
We'll get there next year. But we purposely hire in all realms of hospitality because that's what we have focused on from day one with our program. We reach out to most people we've hired in our direct sales program come from restaurants, hospitality, hotels. Tasting room and direct sales are not the only place to hire other people. In fact, we more often than not look for people with no wine experience because we can teach that. We can't teach them very easily how to be hospitable humans if they aren't that way already.
Yeah, people are chuckling. Yeah, that seems resonant as well. Absolutely, right? We're gonna talk a lot about hospitality versus sales today, if you haven't already noticed. So that's a huge theme. And hospitality people are a rare breed. People that have that gene. It is a tough thing to teach. It is very, very difficult to show someone how to be compassionately hospitable in their everyday life. So yeah, please look outside the box for those kinds of things. Does anybody hire people from the restaurant industry? Yeah, actively, right? They're great.
I have another plug for Jeff Peterson in the audience. Does everybody know that there's a wine studies major at Linfield now? That's a really awesome resource for us. And they have a program called Cat Connect where you can post jobs and hire people. And we've hired, I don't even know how many Linfield students at this point, partly because I'm an alum and my mother has worked there for 25 years and sent us a lot of really good people, including a few of you in the audience I can see. But that's another really great local resource of people who are interested in learning more about wine because they're going to pay a lot of money to go to Linfield to learn about it. Mm-hmm. The next bullet point, hire slower, fire faster. Should also talk slower. I heard this in a seminar not too long ago, and I can't really harp on it enough. And there's not a lot more to expand upon, but take your time, make sure you have the right people, and if they're not the right fit, then get rid of them and move on. Bad apple. And that leads right into hire the person, not the position. And I know sometimes this sounds a little bit more easier said than done, but my boss, Tony Soder, has always said this from the beginning, that you find the good people, and then you figure out how to fit them into your company. And then as we get to retention, how do you keep them? And last but not least on that slide, they're interviewing you while you're interviewing them as well. I think we've probably all thought about this. I think it's probably more true with millennials than it's ever been before. Does your job description sound exciting? Is your website compelling? Do they know what life is going to be like if they work for you? If you look at the people page, do the people look like they're having a good time? Do you have a people page? Or is it just you and your husband on the website and doesn't say anything about who works for you? Right? What does the environment look like? Everybody's going to look at the website first.
True. Want to take any? No questions at the end. Once you have them in the door, so the difficult part, right? We just solved that in 2 slides. Everybody feels no problem, right?
Everybody's good now, right?
77%, extremely difficult. Now it's all fine, and you're hitting on your barista, and everybody's good to go. Now you've got them in the door. Training. There's some pretty interesting hospitality training modules out there, sure. We would encourage you to watch a video called How to Become a Hospitalian by Bobby Stuckey. It's a TED Talk. It's just a little over 7 minutes. Has anyone in the audience seen this video?
We wanted to show part of it, but we couldn't.
We did.
Licensing.
Apparently, the TED Talk people have some pretty legal parameters around their videos being shown. So we didn't want to get into that kind of trouble here today. So we wanted to talk about this video and encourage you to spend the 7 minutes. Have your staff spend the 7 minutes. My partner owns a restaurant. When I came across this video, I had my staff watch it. It changed everything for us. And for him as well. He had his staff watch it. They flipped the entirely how they greet and treat their people when they walk in the door. It becomes a certain undercurrent of hospitality. And hospitality, we talk about hospitality a lot in the tasting rooms, but what does that really feel like? And I'll just summarize a little bit in the video. There is a story that he tells, and for those of you who don't know who Bobby Stuckey is, he's a master somm. He's a very gregarious, happy master sommelier. It took him 8 times to pass his master sommelier exam, and he is humbled and wonderful because of it, and I think a humble and wonderful man prior to that. He owns a restaurant called Frasca in Boulder. It's been a thriving restaurant for longer than most restaurants are allowed to thrive in our Turnham and Burnham world, and very, very successfully, and is known in the industry as providing some of the best hospitality that you could ever receive. And so he's telling the story in this TED Talk about how he and his wife went to Italy, and they went to a 5-star restaurant, 3-star Michelin star restaurant, ticked every box. The service was perfect. They went out into the night, happy that they had had that experience. And then the next day, took a train to Modena and went to a little under the radar restaurant that had been recommended to them. And he can tell you in the TED Talk exactly who was in that room, because they became a community because of how this particular restaurant treated them. The chef came out from the kitchen and plucked this young chef that was there taking notes at the bar, took him into the back. I mean, the way that they were treated, the way that they felt leaving that restaurant, being in that restaurant, was different. And it didn't need to be a 3 Michelin starred spot. It wasn't the most expensive food. It may not have even been better food. What they talked about was how they felt when they walked back out into the night. Their whole world had shifted. They felt it.
The warm and fuzzy feelings.
Yeah,
again.
Do you have that when people walk in your door? Are you saying the right things to them? Are you inviting them in the right ways? Have your people become hospitality people first. The sales will follow.
And how do you do that? You take time. You make the time to be with them and train them. And we have an extensive training program for anybody who works in our tasting room. It is usually 2 solid weeks of training, if not more. And partly that's our structure. When you sit down and you work in our tasting room, you're sitting with a group of people on your own for an hour, and often in a separate building from anybody else, so you have to be really comfortable in front of people. But you also need to, more importantly, we want to make sure that they are performing and giving the best hospitality that they can possibly give. And so we spend tons of time. They spend time with all of our DTC managers. They spend time with Jules, who runs our entire direct-to-consumer program. Sometimes they spend time with me. And all of that time that we spend with them will return to you in value of how much they know about your company, how well they're able to express what actually goes on there. It's worth it. And that leads to the next bullet point, which is communicate. I can't also harp on this one enough. If you have something going on in the vineyard, tell your tasting room staff, because then they can tell your customer that day. You might not think that grafting over whatever you're doing that day is interesting, but to them that's super cool. They've probably never seen some vines being grafted over, right? And just letting them know what's going on, because again, they're your face. One thing that we've used recently for the last 2 or 3 years is an app called Slack. And if you work in multiple buildings like we do, we have about 4 different buildings on the property spread out over 240 acres. Just knowing what's going on all around the ranch has changed our company culture enormously, because we all feel a little bit more like we know what's happening. The one thing I also wanted to add about training was, or about where to find people, is aside from restaurants. Hold on, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Carrie, want to take Empower?
I was going to take Empower, yeah. I was
for it.
also going to talk about something with the hospitality sphere. This is going to directly lead to an increase of traffic, and I can tell you how it's worked for us. When we moved into this hospitality mentality, and away from harping on ask for the case sale instead of the one bottle sale, we suddenly started getting a rash of 5-star reviews. I would wake up every morning, I'm in charge of the review system, checking to make sure we've done them and responding to them where we need to. And I wake up in the morning and you've gotten another review, and there's always that little panic, I don't know if you guys feel this too, like just the email that says you've gotten a review. Will it make my day or tank my day? And I open it up, 5 stars, 5 stars, and they're mentioning our staff members by name. And they're saying, so and so, this is what happened. It's not necessarily about the wines. The wines are great. And if you're not making great wine, we've said this before, right? That's no longer a barrier to entry here. If what they're saying on these 5-star reviews is the staff is fantastic. I learned so much. I felt so welcomed. This was our first stop. It's heartwarming, and I feel so proud and excited every time I open one of these up. And it's not that we don't get the we came in, it was always at a time when it was busy, and they didn't get the attention that they could have gotten or that they would have gotten had there not been 500 other people in the tasting room at the time. But that has absolutely directly affected our traffic. People look at those reviews. They very much do. And if you're not promoting that somehow in your tasting room, and you're not rewarding that kind of hospitality to your staff, you're missing a huge opportunity to get more bodies, new bodies in that front door, because they're looking those things up and they're walking in and saying, oh, we saw the reviews on TripAdvisor. Couldn't wait to come experience it for ourselves. That's word of mouth, and it's happening on a big scale.
The platinum rule. Does anybody know what the platinum rule is in this room? It is, exactly. It's not treating how you want to be treated. It's treating people how they want to be treated. And the point about this, because everybody should know this if you work in hospitality, it should also not just be towards the customer, but as managers, treat your employees how they want to be treated. Not how you think that you would like to be treated if you were in their shoes.
Right, we used an assessment called DISC. Has anybody done DISC or Myers-Briggs or any of those? They're helpful. We did them for our full-time staff at the winery and not our part-time tasting room staff. So we have an entire microcosm of people working collectively to manage over half of your winery's sales, and yet they're not included in that. And we do talk to them somewhat like restaurant staff, right? Everybody's managed in the exact same way. They come in, they clock out, they've made their sales. We need to make that much more broadly encompassing. We need to bring that into the winery in the same way that we talk to the rest of our employees. And the empower portion of that, not to skip over, make sure that they know how to take their own intelligent risks, right? Mm-hmm. Make sure that they have the information to be intelligent in their decisions, and then let them take the risks. We joke around a lot about, asking for forgiveness instead of permission. But, I think it was Leslie yesterday that was saying, give them the bumpers, give them enough room to have ownership of that space. That's huge. If I'm in there selling something, I can say, oh, I asked for this many of the bottles to be made because this, it's a different conversation. And they hear that in my voice and they say, oh, she's in charge. Mm-hmm. She knows so much, I'm going to buy all this wine from her, right? But does your lowest person on the totem pole have that same feeling, because those are the people that are selling your wine, right? If they can't speak with that kind of authority and you haven't given them the leeway to be able to do so, they're going to sell less wine. Okay, we're already getting down. Structure. Assess your job descriptions. Be clear about time management. How many of you have had a great rock star salesperson in the front and you keep promoting them to manager, and then suddenly they're sitting at a computer all day long and you don't have a great rock star salesperson in the front? Think about what that is for you. If you have an excellent hospitality person in the front, what do the first 2 hours of the day look like? Are they out there setting up glassware with somebody who's not a rock star hospitality person? They should be in the back, taking care of their work and coming out with a totally clean slate, ready to help your people. The customer comes first. They should know that you are flexible when those things get turned in, because a customer has walked in the door and that's their first priority. That report that's due at the end of the day, if it doesn't get done because you've sold 6 cases of wine to one customer and they leave here with stars in their eyes and ready to come back, every day turn the report in the next day or next week.
And make sure they know that. Again, communication.
Don't let competition take over your floor. And you've got to structure your commissions such. Make things group-oriented before they're individually oriented. Make sure there's a group mentality there. That was another one that when I started as the direct sales manager, I came in from the restaurant world, and oh my God, the hospitality was atrocious because they were all afraid of one another. And I stood back and I watched them on a busy Saturday, and I'm taking over a team. I barely know these people, and I'm watching customers walk in the door, and I'm like itchy over it. And I'm like juggling and trying to say hi to everybody and host everybody, and no one's helping me, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I ask at the end of the day, what the heck happened out there? You didn't greet anybody. Oh, well, last time I did, so-and-so accused me of stealing their customer, and then I was shocked. I said, then our commission structure is broken. It's broken. If you are letting people walk in the door and stand there awkwardly, oh my God, right? You got to have something like a 15-second rule, and you've got to have everybody on the same team. And if we're all working together for that goal, it's great that somebody's greeting and then you're getting that customer. But make sure that's happening.
We only do group incentives in our direct sales program so far because we tried it once for a very short period of time, less than 2 weeks, to do individual incentives, and it completely changed the energy in our entire hospitality department. So it's important to do the group incentives, individual too, depending on your setup, but it's hard to not make it feel like, well, you stole my customer, that was mine.
Did you like my acidity, tannin, and fruit joke?
No, anybody laughed
No
at that?
one laughed
I thought
at that?
was good.
That's one of my best right there, you guys. I'm in a world of hurt if that didn't land
Yeah.
right. So team retention, your perks, those can go beyond those incentives. Those can go way beyond those incentives.
We have some different ones because we're unique in that we have a full-fledged farm on our ranch. And so, for example, last year we raised turkeys for every single full-time employee so they would have a turkey at Thanksgiving with their family. And that was a lot of work. And I won't say we'll do it every year, but it was a really nice gesture. We also have a CSA of vegetables all summer long for our staff. We have a health and wellness program. We have a staff member in the tasting room who also teaches bar class, so we offered her to come teach for us once a week for a small stipend, and it's awesome.
And 401k, wine allowance benefits in 401k, those are tougher for smaller wineries, absolutely, but wine allowances are not so tough. That's a write-off, pretty easy on the bottom line. Education, do you reimburse education? Do you want your people getting better and better and better at what they do and you want to support that? Consider reimbursement for education. And then, sorry.
So I was going to say, and not just outside education, remember that you are likely your best asset to your company. Most of our education that we do with our staff is with other department heads, our vineyard manager, our ranch manager, our winemakers speaking to our staff and vice versa, so we can all learn from one another, because not everybody can afford outside education.
And then incentives. I mean, this is a pretty huge category. When we polled those same wineries that told us that staffing and traffic were an issue, every single one of them had different incentives. And you see that with any report that comes out. I'm sure you all have your own dynamic incentive and commission structures. Some of the things to avoid the all or nothing. So if they don't make a goal, they don't make anything, then they're making, again, we talked about the wages, right? They're making relatively nothing. And certainly not what they're surviving on in our region. So be clear that they need to have other paths to make money in those leaner months. Be aware of tipping. This is something that people are increasingly doing. Leslie, again, yesterday brought up some great points to think about when you're moving toward tipping. A lot of people are moving toward tipping, so first be aware of that. I think the biggest thing that she said that shocked me was if everybody else is doing it and you're not, you're going to lose employees to the places that allow them to make more money. So you either need to have a more dynamic commission structure than those tips would allow, or you need to allow for tipping. So keep those things in mind. But keep the tipping under where your incentives come in. That was the other great nugget that Leslie pointed out yesterday. You shouldn't have them making all of the bulk of their incentives and commissions in tip lines, because that's going to engender a very different structure in your tasting room and not one that you're in control of.
Checking in. Back to the warm and fuzzy feelings that millennials like. We all like a lot of check-ins. And you can make it official, you can make it unofficial. Some of the best conversations you might have maybe after an event while you're all polishing glasses together. And sometimes you want to make it a little bit more formal and say it is a real check-in or an annual review. But you want to know how they're feeling. You want to listen to them. Check-ins lead to accountability, right? If you're checking in with them and you're asking them to change something, then you can hold them accountable. Follow up with just a simple note that said thank you. I still, after 8 years, when I get a note from Tony Soder that says thanks, you did a great job, why wouldn't I love that? So I think it's even more important with the younger generation. They want to know they're doing a good job. It doesn't mean that they want to talk about compensation every time. They just want to know that they're doing okay. And what can they do to do better? Going back to that growth and growing within your company.
And further, as a manager, what can you do better, right? Mm-hmm. That should be an equal ask. What can I do to help you do your job? What can I do better as a manager to help you do your job? Let them give you that same feedback and make sure that you are following up on that.
And knowing what's important to you as a company, what are your core values? We know that one of our core values is longevity in employees, but it's also healthcare, for example. It's something that the Soders will not budge on, no matter how many times our CFO tells us it's too expensive, right? Because that's a core value to them. And within these check-ins with people, we found out not that long ago, was just talking to one of our tasting room employees, that she didn't want a raise, but she wanted healthcare, right? Or just asking them, like, what means a lot to you in terms of an employee? Is it recognition? Is it a raise? Is it an extra little bonus here and there? Is it a bottle of champagne? That's the one I get.
Know the motivators, right? I think this next slide is pretty crazy. What's the real cost of losing an employee? This one's really incredible. When you read through all of these, consider these things. Advertising, interviewing, screening, hiring. I mean, that's crazy. Training, management time. A new person may take 1 to 2 years to reach the productivity of an existing person. In a hospitality space, that's scary, right? Because now you're lost engagement. Your people are coming in, your wine club that make up so much of your revenue are coming in and saying, what happened to Susie? Oh, Susie left. The next week somebody else leaves. That doesn't look great, right? That seems very strange to constantly have turnover in your tasting room.
And without talking about it, because there will be turnover in tasting rooms.
Sure.
It's inevitable, but talking to your employees about what happened.
Yeah, the cultural impact, that's a huge one. Mm-hmm. Why did they leave? Suddenly everybody asks themselves, should I also leave? I really liked that person. Why did they go? Something must be wrong. That's a tough thing to continually have to address in a realm like that. And the errors, right? Customer service and errors. People who don't know your systems, they don't know where your wine is, they don't know how to take care of your guest. And that's what we're really talking about here. So your takeaways, all up here. We'd love to hear some questions from you. And now we turn over and find out who's actually asked questions. But come up, there are actually microphones up here as well. We have about 10 minutes to have some conversations, and we'd love to hear from you all. Made you engage a little bit with some nods and some waves, but brave soul. Yes.
We've got a couple questions.
Oh, good. So cute.
So we've seen exactly, is this on? We've seen exactly what you talked about with the millennials. They come in, they pay the $15 or $20 tasting fee, they're out the door. For us, that's break even at best. Do you have any strategies for telling them that for a winery to be sustainable, and they believe in sustainability presumably, they got to buy a bottle of wine or two?
I'll start with
Go
this.
ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's super frustrating when somebody comes in and they take up your time and but your tasting fee should cover your sample cost so that yes, it's a break even, but I would definitely encourage you to think about these millennials as your future and maybe not your present. So have some things in place to cater to your older consumers that want the bigger, broader experience, and your younger consumers that don't take up too much of your time, but get them really engaged with your brand. Because in another 10 years, when they actually have that discretionary income, they're going to remember your winery. And they're going to come back to that winery and say, this is where I had that really incredible experience. And I didn't have the money to pay for a full bottle at this point in time, but maybe they'll see it on a grocery store shelf, or maybe they'll see it in a restaurant and they'll say, that guy was amazing to me. I can't wait to have this bottle again. So yes, it may not be an immediate fix for that particular generation, and I think that's just some pain that we all have to deal with, but if your tasting fees are covering, then you're marketing to that person, and that's the opportunity there is how I feel about it.
They'll remember the experience. And I heard that at the symposium a few years ago. I think it was Michael Kelly Brown was speaking about treating bachelorette parties as if they were human, because they will be, as much as they all drive us crazy, right? They will be your customer in 10 years and remember who treated them like shit or who didn't.
Right. I'd rather have somebody walk out with no bottle than walk out with an angry bottle. Dang bottle they made me buy. You don't want that kind of you don't want that kind of marketing. So, yeah, I think just try to keep it in the positive. I know that that's a tough one, but we all experience that.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm a student at Linfield, and I'm studying management and wine. My question kind of goes off of what we were talking about, working in the tasting room. I just turned 21, and I'm on the cusp of that millennial Generation Z, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this industry. It's been so exciting so far, and it broke my heart to hear that many believe that tasting room is not looked upon as a great part of the winery, and even the fast food reference of being paid to that too kind of was very interesting for me. Besides the salary part, my question is, where do you think the future of that perspective being changed? What do you think that will end up being? And also, just a quick note on the $20 tasting fee. To me, that does almost seem a little expensive. However, with my learning at Linfield, I realized that it's important for a winery to have a tasting fee that reflects their marketing of it. So I think it's the education of millennials that also will help realize what it means to go to a winery and have a bottle of wine and respect the story that the people are selling.
Hi, Hannah. It's nice to see you.
Great points.
I'll start that. I think it's up to us within the wine industry to change that culture, because we absolutely depend on quality tasting room employees, right? And it's not spoken about that way outside of the wine industry. And perhaps because I was in the tasting room for so long, Carrie and I both felt that way, more than others perhaps, because I think it's just up to us within an industry. We have to start talking about it differently and saying, oh, well, you're just tasting room, rather than, oh, you're in national sales, right? I always joke about, I'm sure many people can relate to this, that if you would rather go stand in the back of a warehouse trying to sell somebody wine who has 5 minutes to spare you on the road, if that sounds more luxurious than hanging out at our vineyard and pouring wine for somebody, then we have our priorities really backwards.
It's
right?
all up to us to change that mentality. We have to. Well, I mean, think about it. Seriously, you guys. 60% of your winery's revenue is coming through your direct sales channel. You have to be the voice of change in your winery. We have to change that mentality. We have people that are excited to come work in our industry that are being discouraged to go into that area. That's something. I want to get to a couple of other things. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hannah.
I want to get to a couple of the questions on here. Somebody said everybody should read Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. Coined the term hospitalitarian. I agree. Definitely. Danny Meyer, nailing it. Everybody read it. Whitney says, how can we improve the disconnect between winery and tasting room? It feels like it's a common trend for the winery to look down upon the tasting room. I think you guys are all feeling our pain up here. Yeah, I think that if we knew the answer to that, again, we would have solved all the world's problems. We're putting this forth as a challenge for everyone. And if you have any paths to entry that become easy, please let us know. We're doing everything in our own wineries to continue to do that. But of course, things slip through the cracks because you're busy. Your head is down. You're traveling. You're selling your wine. It's really, really tough to remember to check in all the time and give information where possible. So
Well, and I would say that's been a goal of ours, especially because our buildings are in two different parts of the property, so we physically don't see each other very often. And we've made it a point mostly to communicate with winemakers how important it is for them to get in front of staff. And so then we plan those events 8 a.m. on a Thursday, once a month maybe, something like that, and have a more purposeful education program from within our own staff. Because the winemakers need to know just as much as the DTC crew needs to know, because we'll throw a winemaker in front of guests during a big open house event, and let me tell you, they don't all know how to naturally sell wine.
they're learning about it in a seminar right next door.
Yeah,
Claire, what do you have for us?
Well, I back up what you guys are saying 100% on inviting owners and winemakers to re-enter the tasting room. I host 99% of our appointments because it's the largest revenue stream in my business, and I'm not putting that in anyone else's hands. I know that's not an option for everybody, but Hannah, that tasting room job is the most valuable job in my business, and that's why I do it myself. Now, at some point, I might not be able to do it all, but I value that position, and I invite all the owners or people in management to give that position the respect it deserves. That's not my question.
For those of you who don't know, Claire owns Big Table Farm, and for those of you millennials looking for a job, you have one with somebody who values the heck out of you here. That to me says that you're going to gain some really valuable employees because you have the right mentality to do so.
So the question, thank you.
Sure.
The question is, we're talking about attracting millennials. We're talking about monetizing an experience that they can't afford, right? And that's a problem. So the analog experience is really expensive, that high-touch analog experience that we're saying they want. But there is a digital experience and a digital engagement that we can offer. So my question is, who should everybody in the room be looking at who's doing a kick-ass job at the digital engagement, which at this point is not very expensive?
Well, you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until you start, with the animal stuff, then I'm on board 100%. But you tell me to look away, so that's a good.
I do tell you to look
thank
away.
you.
Yeah. But who can we look at who's doing a really good job at the digital engagement? Because I do believe that is the most affordable way to do it with the folks that we're trying to inspire.
That's a good question.
I'm not sure anybody comes to mind. I mean, I really do admire the way that you handle your social media, Claire, and if you wasn't you asking this question, you would have been my answer to that. I think Jeff Lewis is in the audience. He takes care of the social media for Alexana as well quite often, and comes at it from a great educational standpoint, and I always learn something from him when I see posts come up, and I think those are really engaging. Millennials they want to be in touch with your winery. They want to feel like they are there, and they want to feel like they've learned something. They want to feel like they're taking away that experience. So it's not just, showing a picture of your vines, but what's happening in those vines. So I think that you two are doing a great job at it. I would love to research that a little bit more, and I'll bet our friend Vanessa, is Vanessa Haddock in this room? She sent us a nice little note. She is in the back. But Vanessa Haddock is a great one to talk to about this digital space. She's an incredible marketer at Sokol Blosser, and has worked with a lot of people on social media. Vanessa, do you have anybody that comes to mind, other than you, of course? Union.
I'd say
Union.
I'd
Great.
also say
Thanks,
Scribe
Brittany.
in California.
Oh, Scribe.
Talk
Killing
about
it.
feeling old and not like a millennial. When I went to Scribe, I could tell I wasn't from there. But they do a really great job of targeting youth. Vanessa, did you have one?
We're over time. You guys can hang out. We'll stay if you're hungry.
But I would agree, and we think as a company that social media is not to sell wine, right? But it's to enhance that experience. We post a lot of pictures of our cows and our pigs and what goes on up there, so people know what it's like to visit. But
we'll look into that, Claire. I think that's a really great question and something we should all be aware of. We should know who our icons are and who we should be modeling and emulating.
Hi. So staff retention is very important to me. I work for Sweet Cheeks Winery down in Eugene.
Oh.
And I was also like loving all of your points on how to get retention and stuff. But in the back of my mind, I also was trying to remember the hire slower, fire faster. And I think that there are maybe a couple, not necessarily bad apples, but people that need some work in a lot of the areas to really represent our brand. Is it more detrimental / would it be more beneficial to empower those staff that we do have and get them to the point where they're representing our brand better? Or would it be better to really just like start fresh?
Ooh, I think it's
That's
so hard to
situational.
answer without knowing your staff personally. You know,
I would say follow your gut is the shortest answer, because
Okay.
each person's going to be a different situation.
do you feel like you've done everything possible as a manager to get them to those places and they just won't get there?
For a couple, maybe, and then others, I think that there's definitely some room to grow. So.
Yeah. I mean, I would put, I think a great point is to always put your energy toward the people that have the room to grow instead of the people that are sapping all of your energy. Because if
Yes.
you're spending all of your time going nowhere,
Yes.
yeah. And
Thank
good luck.
We know we're over time, so we'll take more
Yeah.
questions up here if you guys want to come up
Yeah,
and
come
talk
up
to
and
us.
hang.
But thank you, everybody.
Courtney. Thank you all. Have a great lunch. Oh yeah, hoots and hollers.